Data storytellers. Today, we have a very exciting episode on the podcast because we have Matt Howell from WB Games, Warner Brothers Games. And I was looking forward to this episode, not only because we had some really good ones with game development companies before. I mean, Matt, you listen to the podcast, you might have caught the one with Francisco Reyes from Microsoft Games or Max Mitrov from Activision Blizzard. But I have a confession to make. My favorite superhero growing up was indeed Batman, right? And also, I think I was already in high school. I mean, I'm a millennial. I was already in high school, and when Batman Arkham Asylum came out, I think I disappeared for a couple of days, and it was one of those games that I just maxed out to 100%, right? So we had a cool conversation even before the podcast recording, so I'm very excited to have you on the show, Matt. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I did, as far as the Arkham games go, didn't we all disappear for a couple of days when they came out? I definitely feel that.
Would you mind giving a short introduction into your role there and what you do?
I run an organization called Digital Publishing Technology. Digital Publishing Technology is a collection of three different disciplines. Our traditional analytics offering, a whole world of marketing technology as well. And on the marketing technology side, we standardize a large amount of publishing and marketing needs that go into each product before they ship. And then the third leg of that stool is our player network as well. And our player networks are identity services, commerce, and a collection of services that we bring to our fans so that we can take their love of our IP and bring it across all of our different properties. On the analytics side, which is most apropos to this discussion today, our analytics organization actually breaks down into three different areas as well. So we have a group that focuses on publishing analytics. This is working with our growth marketers, our brand marketers, CRM, customer service, all those various live ops teams to bring data about our live business into the day-to-day and help refine the business on an ongoing basis with data. Then we also have a game analytics organization, which for other industries, game analytics is akin to product analytics. This is a group of folks that work alongside our studios to understand the market that their product is going to compete in, establish benchmarks, and then work with those development teams to instrument the game and track the performance of the game during development to make sure that it's hitting the bars that they want to hit to take it live. And then that team plays an important role in helping operate the game once it's live as well, understanding deeply what the mechanics and the systems of the game are doing. And then last, binding all this together, we have an analytics platform and operations team as well that works with all of these groups to make sure that we're collecting data, we're keeping it compliant, and that we're making it accessible and democratized across the organization.
Got it. And then your role is basically overseeing all of those data-related operations, basically.
That's right.
Fantastic. Yeah, because just lately, because we're in a hiring spree, so I hired a bunch of guys, and then there's a growing pressure of giving them visibility on the business and even our clientele. So we work with usually senior executives working with data science and analytics, and I tried to break it down for them quickly and actually use ChatGPT. I'm sure that this is something that we might talk about later. To okay, well, give me just like a list from manager all the way to the C-suite. Like a breakdown of the different roles, and then after it kind of spits out the technical jargon, okay, now make this digestible. So they came up with a few analogies. One was a sports analogy with like, captain of the team, coach of the team, owner of the team, right? The different levels. So, okay, you are basically VP and you oversee and lead different departments, basically applying data science in multiple aspects of the business.
That's right.
Fantastic. So before we move forward to the more, technical side of the conversation, what brought you into data analytics? So your personal journey. And feel free to make this as wide as you'd like. I don't know if in the background, like the skateboards, you know, I don't know if you are actually doing skateboarding. I think we might touched on that in the initial conversation. I don't know the relevance of that particular aspect to your data science career, but yeah, if you could just give us a little bit of visibility of how you evolved over the years and how you ended up in your current role, that would be fantastic.
Sounds great. I'll try to touch on skateboarding for a moment, but so actually, I go way back to the 80s when I was a kid. My father was a bond trader for a bank in Los Angeles, and he was part of a team that brought the first PCs onto the bond trading floor. Went from pen and paper and solving solutions in your head to actually building statistical models on a PC that they could run in real time. And what that meant was that we ended up with PCs at home to play with, and that was the first time I saw that technology could be a force multiplier for a human. Where my other siblings were excited just to play games on the computer, I was excited about how it worked. And I was excited about what you could do with it. How could you break it? What could you push forward on it? So that kind of set the scene for, I always thought back to that. And that was the first time I got like that excited, like twinge of, okay, this is something cool. If we fast forward to the late 90s, I did my undergrad in Los Angeles at Loyola Marymount University with a degree in computer information systems. Being in LA and being in a CIS track in the late 90s, early 2000s was a really interesting time because you had Y2K that was going on, you had the .com boom that was going on, and then LMU was trying to figure out what the identity of this CIS program was. Was it more computer science? Was it more business? Was that mix in the middle? And so they had this really cool collection of professors that were brought in that were bringing real world problems, their day to day and their side jobs, bringing that in, talking about what they were working on. And so we saw ground floor what was going on in the space. And that was my first introduction to XML at the time, which now we take this for granted and many generations later. But that was the first time I saw you could establish and enforce a vocabulary around a business. You could describe it, and it made it so much more tangible. So you just started thinking about problems very differently. I was just very excited to have that. And touching on skateboarding for a second, that was in college. That was actually my first informal game credit. Was on a hockey team with a friend that was working on Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2. And he was leading the artist team that put all of the textures on the different maps. And so our hockey team's names are all graffitied all over the Venice Beach level. So I always thought that was kind of cool. Like, all right, this is great. As a skateboarder in high school and college, I dabbled in it, but really my younger brother was probably the more talented skateboarder. And so spent more time watching him pull off great tricks than actually doing them myself. Skateboards we have here, just a collection I found over the years that Almost Skateboards did a highlight of DC Comics. I built those out. And they make a nice background. These are actually my coworkers. We'll talk a little bit about that in a moment, right? So after finishing my my undergraduate degree in the early 2000s, I spent some time in IT consulting, traveling around and providing business analysis support for a number of different industries. It was ground floor for the rollout of HIPAA here in the United States, working with health software companies to try and figure out what the rocky rollout of HIPAA meant. To what data you collected, who could see it, and what could you do with that data, and how did you need to protect your site and your services? A lot of conversations that are just coming full circle again now as compliance changes, right? I also spent some time working in online education with University of Phoenix as online education started to grow with availability of the internet. They had a really interesting challenge that all of their enrollment was paper-based. You would fill out your transcripts, collect them, and mail them in, and it took a month to 2 months to get enrolled. And that created a massive bottleneck in enrollment that limited the scale that the company could grow to. So we built out a workflow and imaging solution where You faxed in your transcripts, your application. It got scanned. It was all coded and tagged. And then we took that data, we passed it through a workflow system so that we could actually enroll people in 24 hours. And that really, it dramatically changed the scale of the business. It changed how the business operated. It changed how we reported and forecasted because we had a better idea what the pipeline looked like in real time. It was very cool to see that transformation. From there, I started a journey through financial services, working at Fiserv. And Fiserv, massive financial service organization here in the US. And first working on decision support systems in Scottsdale. And that was, looking back, it's kind of comical how hard we worked to move large volumes of data around, where now in minutes you can go to a cloud vendor and you can turn on a bucket and start shuttling data into it. But we were passing around tape backups through FedEx or through deliveries. We would load a bank or credit union's history of lending and their current positions into a model, and then make recommendations of what their future risk tolerance should be and return that back. And again, what took days there, we can now do in minutes, but it was exciting to see the volume and figuring out how to solve those problems before easier solutions came to mind. Then I had an opportunity to move to their mortgage database business in San Diego. And that world was quite different. It moved a lot faster, where we were moving these big bowling balls of data around and working with a few clients. On the mortgage side of things, we were working with every mortgage lender, it seemed like, in the United States. And we were working with a large number of partners as well. When you think about mortgages, what it takes to sign a mortgage in the US, you have insurance providers, you have flood and home insurance, you have secondary market of who's going to fund a loan, how you price it, even printing the documents that people need to sign. There's whole businesses that are set up that print the documents for whatever format is required by each locale. And so part of my role there was connecting with all these partners to understand what their data needs were, understanding what they could tell us about our mortgage applicants, and help improve our lending process and bring those insights into our core database product that we're building out for lending. I thought that, coming from the decision support services, I thought that business was moving at light speed, that we made changes on a quarterly and an annual basis. It's like, oh, wow, this is such a rush. We're having to move so fast. But the amount of data that's involved in a mortgage is, let's call it maybe 150 data points. And it really doesn't change much. That if you know those 150, you can pivot a bunch of times and you know everything you need. From there, a friend called me and said, I moved down the street to Sony Online Entertainment. We have challenges that I've never seen before. This is such a jump from the financial services world. You should come and take a look. We could really use your help. So I showed up for my first interview, suit and tie and everything, and everybody else is wearing flip-flops, board shorts, and tank tops. I think the guy that my first interviewer had a towel wrapped around his head because he had just come from surfing at the beach. And so it was definitely, like, minute one, I knew it was very different.
Culture shock.
But my friend wasn't wrong, right? Entertainment, when you look at the data that's coming in, massive volume of data, a huge variety of data that they're describing. The Sony Online Entertainment builds these massive multiplayer online worlds, MMOs. You might be familiar with EverQuest, DC Universe Online, Star Wars Galaxies. At its height, I think they had 8 to 10 different virtual worlds that were all running in real time. They had a Pirates virtual world, everything running all at once. So people were in these virtual worlds 24/7, spending, interacting, socializing. And we wanted to understand what they were doing, make sure that we were in front of their needs, that the systems were operating correctly. So that 24/7 nature of the business and the just sheer volume of the business meant that we were doing changes to the business that would have taken Fiserv, let's say, 6 to 12 months. We were doing in 24 to 48 hours. Like, hey, let's run this campaign. Let's test this instrument, push it live. Let's see what happens. So it was very exciting. And then last on our journey, I got a call from Warner Brothers several years after arriving at Sony. And I was familiar with a studio they had just acquired, Turbine. That Turbine operated Lord of the Rings Online and Dungeons and Dragons Online, one of EverQuest's big competitors. They called me and said, we're setting up a team similar to what you're doing at Sony, and we'd love to see if you're interested in coming and working on these games. And definitely, I was excited about what was going on. During the interview, though, I thought they were in Texas. And so I spent the entire interview talking to them and thinking, oh, okay, well, I moving from San Diego to Texas. That's not that far. And at the end of the interview, they shared, well, we never thought somebody would move from San Diego to Boston. This is a great conversation. Like, okay. Well, my wife is actually from Boston and grew up here on the East Coast. And so when I came home, told her, like, hey, found this company. Warner Brothers wants to see if they can build the studio into something that can help all of the studios in their network. But it's in Massachusetts. She told me two things. When do we move, and don't screw this up? So it's a great, very supportive conversation. Thankfully, we've loved it. We've been here 12 years, or coming up this summer. We've loved every minute of it. Arriving at WB Games, the world was in many cases the same, but in many cases different. They had bought this MMO business to create an entertainment as a service central set of teams that could take live operations and best practices around live marketing and bring it to all of their studios. What we learned over the years is that not all studios and not all businesses need the same set of services. You have to build that out and kind of tailor it to each platform and each genre of game. And we've now matured that over time, where we can support each of our studios in a great way. When I originally got here, my focus was on building identity solutions and commerce, but that quickly led into analytics. We had a small team at Turbine that was supporting the analytics of the local Turbine studios, but we noticed quickly that whenever one of the other studios was launching a game, they'd come to us and say, hey, can we borrow that team for a few weeks to support our game? And well, okay, sure, we'll figure that out. Well, after a couple of those asks, we realized, wait, hold on, this is a team that really needs to be centralized. Let's scale this forward. And as we were looking at how this small team operated, they had invested in a lot of really smart automation because they were small and because they were working on these large worlds. They invested in some smart schema management. They invested in some great reporting solutions, and it was ready to grow quickly. And so my charge over the last 8 years has been taking this team and growing it from that one studio service solution to what the organization is now, a multidiscipline analytics offering that supports all of our marketers, all of our studios, as well as the marketing services that can take our learnings about our players and actually act on them and intervene in real time back to the game. As a result of this journey through Sony and through WB Games, I've launched 40 games or more. I mean, it's like age. Once you reach 40, you stop keeping count. So 40 plus games, everything from PC, console, mobile, premium games, free-to-play games, kids games. So seeing a lot of different entertainment products over the years. But so that's been my journey to WB Games. From here, I'm excited to see, as we're now part of the WB Discovery family, and what that now means as we grow moving forward.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I know that there are some bigger changes happening over at Warner Brothers in general, because we work with a few of your colleagues, not in the gaming side of the business, but in the larger company. It's a really cool operation these days, and actually so many things to talk about there. First of all, I didn't realize that you were in Boston, right? Because Rena, you live in Boston, right?
I do, just outside of Boston. Again, I thought I was moving to Texas, but it turns out Boston is my favorite part of the West Coast.
Okay, no, absolutely. Actually, think my first time in North America was in Boston, and we went for business. I think it was in December though, so that was that was very cold. At the same time, that was also, I think, my first time I've been to an NBA game. So I'm used to be a diehard Kobe and Lakers fan, but I paid tribute and went to a Celtics game, which was, I think, like a Saturday mid-afternoon, 1 p.m. And it was like a religious experience, families there, the game 2 hours before. Oh, yeah. It was a full house. I think at the time Kyrie was playing there and they led the board, right? So that was just amazing to see. So it's a really cool energy in that city. It was pretty cool. I think the only colder place I lived at was Toronto.
That's well, I think Toronto takes the award.
Oh yeah, definitely. So actually, that's one of the reasons why we fled to the West Coast now. So we're safe here in Vancouver. Anyways, with gaming, it's interesting that you mentioned Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2. Like, I remember actually playing that game, but again, I think I was a little bit too young for that. Tony Hawk 4 was my main thing. I remember just playing that for weeks on end. Now, in gaming, like, one of the things that I always loved about that industry specifically is its competitive nature in general. I mean, games in general. I mean, you have the competitive games, and it really materializes in the industry as well. Like, I really enjoy those kind of work cultures where you have a high level of competition. Really fosters high performance, I think, in teams, and it really puts people in the zone, so to say, when you have like a nice mix of growing skill and challenge. This is actually where the zone is, where you're not bored, you're not frustrated, but you're on that ideal curve, and also the creative nature of that industry. So even if you look at the most successful games, they're either very competitive or it allows you to express your creativity as well. So for you, how do you find actually working in this industry specifically? What do you love about it the most? And maybe that would allow us to segue into, some of the things that you guys do over at the team.
Sure. Well, so first, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the IP, right? So we get to work on some of the most engaging and most incredible IP in the market. So DC Comics, Lego, Mortal Kombat, Game of Thrones Conquest, and the list keeps going, right? The Harry Potter and the Wizarding World. We just launched Hogwarts Legacy not long ago. So from a career perspective, I've enjoyed that. Get to be part of these incredible stories, and even telling the same story in a new way is really exciting. When you see a new, you mentioned the Arkham series. One of the things that I loved about the Arkham series is the different takes that it took against the theatrical take of Batman that was out there. Right, you could see the story that you have this familiarity and love for this character, but explore it so much deeper than 2 hours in a theater. You now get 40 to 100 hours in some games where you're spending with these characters. That's extremely rewarding. And then I've also enjoyed seeing these live worlds take effect and grow when you see consumers embrace something you've been working on for years, and validating assumptions, or in some cases, disproving assumptions that you made that you have to react to. That can be exciting as well. Bringing these entertainment products live and seeing how fans attach to them, that's huge. And that was something we saw at the beginning of COVID. Our populations changed dramatically when things shut down. We saw more people in our games, and it was certainly very exciting. It's like, wow, we haven't seen this game's growing. Look at this day to day. But then it was humbling to realize we're actually making a difference in people's lives, or people that are out there that are hurting, and that are challenging. And these stories that we're telling, these moments that we're crafting for them, are making a difference and are helping them on a day-to-day, providing some therapy day-to-day. That was a humbling realization. From an analytical perspective, marketing these games, operating and inspecting and adapting on an ongoing basis creates problems that other industries haven't necessarily built up to or seen yet. So we get to innovate in areas where maybe partners haven't made it yet, or try out new approaches to solving problems that the market's starting to consider. We can play with it in its messy form and still have an opportunity to help shape what that looks like at scale. Saw a lot of that on the mobile marketing side. We've seen the example that you gave of building out competitive games, how to do that efficiently when you have a large player population that are all being connected together. How do you make sure that wait times are fast and efficient, that people are being matched with fun pairs? Those are all fun problems to work on.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, with games specifically, we didn't talk about this before, but I'm really glad that you made the connection between storytelling and games, because I do believe that games in general are one of the most powerful platforms for storytelling. I mean, if you look at, for example, cinema, it's one of the highest degrees of art. You know, some people say that if Michelangelo was alive today, he would be a film director. I would maybe add that, I mean, Michelangelo back in his day, he was, making the most beautiful sculptures. Think about the Pieta, right? Or he was painting Sistine Chapel, right? These are two iconic pieces of art, very different platforms of art. Probably he would also work on games, I say. So if he would probably work on movies and games, because it's such a unique experience, like that experiential, immersive storytelling that is not possible in any other platform that I know of. So that's really cool. And when you think about the challenges, so maybe if we shift gears just a little bit to now the data science and the analytics part, because I think we could talk about this for a couple of hours, just the gaming aspect. But then in data science, especially in this highly competitive field, what do you see as the biggest opportunities and challenges? So maybe we can spend time on one or the other a little bit, but what is, from your vantage point, what are the greatest opportunities and challenges in data science in the gaming industry?
So I'll talk about three that are top of mind, and some of this is therapy for me getting to talk about it. So
have the pen and paper.
right. First, changing landscape of compliance, right? So the policies, the laws around the world around what's required to collect and manage, especially consumer data, is still changing rapidly. And I don't think we've really seen it slow down yet. And in many cases, we're now seeing countries going back and revising laws as well. And so that's creating an interesting challenge of how do you comply with this? How do you make sure that you're honoring consumers' wishes, and how do you make sure that you're in line with what each region's letter of the law is? So we spend a lot of time understanding how things are changing and then adapting our services to make sure that we're in line with that. And that's something I certainly value about my team and the partners at WB, is I think we do a great job of listening and being on top of that. Another challenge is what we talked about, large language models and the commercialization of AI. I probably worry about different areas than maybe some other folks. There's certainly headlines of, AI is going to replace us all. And hey, we can talk about that in more detail. But I look at it more pragmatically about what is this doing for my team? How do we make sure that we are constructing future project teams to take advantage of this, and that we understand how big or how small a team needs to be. A single person can do a lot with the right co-pilots and the right tool chain set up. On the tool chain side, how do we make sure that that we are able to work with our proprietary data in these models in a way without giving away the farm as these new commercial entities are coming forward. What's that line? How do we figure that piece out? I'll say those challenges aren't really new, at least for entertainment. That there's been partners or vendors producing large language models for a while and bringing commercialized AI solutions. What's different now is the underlying model is being exposed in a very accessible interface like ChatGPT. But many of our partners were using AI solutions to make predictions or to generate content in the past. And so we've had to navigate that anyway. And it's an ongoing challenge. And then the staffing side is what are we looking for as we grow our team over time, right? The technology solutions that are available are changing again so fast that we now have new tools that are changing. I mean, the capabilities are changing every 24, 48 hours, right? I just, one of the things I do in the morning is go check out GitHub and see, hey, okay, what's new here? And of the handful of projects that I follow, okay, what's been added in the last 24 hours? I've not seen a pace of innovation this fast. Well, how do you find staff that are capable of keeping up with that change and that are like-minded in this? So those are some challenges that I think about. But they also, on the opposite end, they also create some opportunities. So looking at co-pilots and connecting co-pilot capability to everybody in our team in some way, shape, or form, whether you're an analyst, data scientist, data engineer, product manager, there's a solution that automates part of your day. We want to make sure that we're finding ways to leverage that. Looking at where I think the next unlock is, it's already happening around us right now, is AutoGPT having orchestration elements on top of these large language models, which I think will grow to become the predominant interaction with these models over time. How do we make sure? I think there's an opportunity to connect systems and services, our proprietary information into those workflows. So again, we're creating that force multiplier. Another opportunity I see is there's some interesting, so moving on from AI, but we can talk more about that in a moment if you want. Data catalogs. There's some really interesting things going on in that space of the convergence of the traditional data catalog space, observability platforms, governance platforms. We've thought about those as separate solutions historically, but I'm starting to see that as rules change, or compliance rules change, that this market is starting to converge and overlap with each other. And so the way we talk about our workflows, the way that we structure teams to access data and how to curate that data is changing alongside the changes in the data catalog space. And then similarly, on the technology side, the maturity of managed services. There's a lot of analytical systems that we had to have big operational teams that were setting up hosted solution Apache projects, let's say, and hosting that ourselves. Now you're seeing every cloud vendor is maturing managed solutions there. And so the types of folks maybe need more operations, less development to navigate that. And then I square in the middle of challenges and opportunities. I would throw out the shift from deterministic measurement to econometrics. Large publishers, entertainment providers, certainly consumer goods companies have been building out econometric solutions like media mix models for a very long time. But now you see good chunks of the gaming market that became reliant upon deterministic measurement are now waking up and saying, oh, well, this media mix model solution that wasn't for us in the past, we have to retool our brains to think that way because the signals that we used to have are no longer abundantly available. Now I've got to make that jump. I view that as an opportunity because I think there's a false confidence that comes from deterministic measurement. There's so much noise that we ignored as a an industry, that moving to econometric solutions gets us a better read of what's going on, and it forces better hygiene around your marketing teams, your publishing teams, your analysts, your data scientists, to all agree on what you're doing, what's in flight, what data is coming from that, how you're measuring it, and it's forcing yet a whole new shared vocabulary around how you discuss the performance of your entertainment products as a result. So I'm excited from that I see across the entertainment industry, teams that didn't traditionally work together are now starting to have to work together more closely. That's creating new connections with customers and partners.
Okay, so much to talk about here. Why don't we start with the ChatGPT topic? Because I think it's also ChatGPT, generative language modeling, and AI, because I think it also branches off into some of the other sections. So I'm going to go ahead and say it that I'm actually quite a laggard in adopting new technologies. So I like to say that I adopt one every 5 to 10 years. So once I adopted the iPhone, I think the next step was Apple Pay. And I think the next one is happening right now with generative language modeling, right? So I even skipped Siri and all that stuff. You know, I don't have an Alexa in the home. I just didn't adopt these things. But generative language modeling is one of those technologies that I think just comes every couple of decades, maybe even in terms of its impact and magnitude. I think everyone kind of struggles with understanding how big this is. I do think that there, as always, there are maybe misguided, misunderstood concerns, but then on the other hand, I don't think that anyone really understands how big this thing will become. And just to give you a specific example, so and maybe even addressing the concern of AI taking away jobs. Just from my perspective as a business owner operating actually in this field, I think it is true and false at the same time. And this is why, like, for example, in our business, when you have a high growth company like ours, there are always opportunities, there are always roles that need to be filled, like jobs that need to be done, right? And we're actually struggling to keep up with the hiring and get good people in who align with our work culture and all that. And generative language modeling, it's never happened to me before, that it literally wiped out like 3 jobs that we had in our, I had to pull the job ads because from one day to another, literally overnight, generative language modeling, very basic use of ChatGPT, solved those problems, or at least made the pain manageable to the level of I don't need now a full hire, a full onboarding, right?
Right.
Now, yes, so in that sense, ChatGPT just wiped out 3 jobs overnight. But guess what happened? It created 4 at the same time, and much cooler jobs, much more enjoyable jobs that actually generate more value for our company and for our clients, and in general, just value being pushed into the economy at the same time, right? So, and funnily enough, actually, the person that we hired, he's now he's our automation guy essentially, right? So he oversees the same operations, but now from the place of I'm now working on applying automation technologies, mainly generative language model based ones, to optimize our operations, like an operational excellence guy, right? So this is our experience. This is just one data point, right? But I assume the same thing is happening across all industries. So for you guys, for example, with generative language modeling, maybe we can also now talk about the business adopting these new ways of working, right? So where did you see the bottleneck in this? Because on the one hand, there will be these new technologies completely changing the game, right? Pun very much intended in this case. And at the same time, you know how it works when you have a technology like data science analytics, for example, you know how amazing it can be for the business. You know the value it can generate, but then that's not the problem. The reason why the business doesn't adopt it, has to do with very different things. It's not about the technology not being there. It has to do about how people perceive analytics and data science. So maybe if we could spend a little bit of time on your view on this and your experiences in terms of how the business views analytics and data science and AI and the whole bucket, and what it can actually do and the real potential and the friction between the data science team and the function and the business users. How do you see bridging that gap? What do you see as the main sticking points in that, the main bottlenecks? And maybe if you could share your take on how to overcome this resistance or barrier, if the question makes sense.
Sure, it does. It does. So I'll say my answer to this has changed over the years. When we were a small initial startup analytics team, we didn't have as many tools and as much value to bring to all the different corners of the business. So we had to be a lot more selective and think very clearly about what teams we approached, what problems we aimed to solve, whether we could be authentic with those teams based on the data that we had, and whether we could invest to support them. So first, there's really a level setting of, are you ready to be working with the partners that you want to be working with? And if not now, what's your path to getting there? And so maybe that steers that conversation. There were definitely teams that we said, well, we definitely want to be with you. We want to be supporting your use cases. We think we can provide a lot of value, but we need to jump through these hoops first. And so maybe we talk next year, or maybe we spend some time educating this year or next year, and then 2 years out. And so there was definitely thinking about a who and when as part of that. One of the things we also realized is that even when we're ready, not every team is ready to or has the same needs. Certainly when you think about the types of entertainment products we develop, a free-to-play game, traditionally on mobile, is going to live and die by their daily metrics, right? You have growth marketing, you have engagement campaigns, that you have a lot of levers and switches that you are tweaking the performance of that funnel on a daily basis. Whereas a premium game, maybe not so much, especially on console where and PC, where there's many more ceremonies to shipping updates to the game. The quality and the certification needs of the game mean that you can't necessarily move as fast. And so they're going to be more reliant upon data solutions during the development of the game and less so during live ops. Whereas on the free-to-play side of things, you're going to spend some time understanding the business, developing some hypotheses, but you're really going to be testing those out in a live market. So those are lenses you want to, I found for me have been helpful to look through. Within those businesses, you also have individuals that are on different levels of that adoption spectrum of whether they're early adopters or they're laggards, and you have to understand that and be direct with folks. Well, so what level of adoption are you ready for, and what's your comfort level? What's your background on some of these things? Understand how they're working first. One of the things that I think my team has done a great job at is establishing credibility where our partners lie first. So that might be an old solution running in an Access database, or someone's model that they handcrafted in a Google Sheet or an Excel document on their desktop. Be really nice to pull that into a cloud solution and turn that into a reusable model. But that's getting folks ready to jump into that transition is oftentimes a hard sell when people have P&L commitments. At the end of the day, they care that the job is getting done and you're not getting in the way of that. So sometimes it helps to jump in and say, we're going to understand how you're working. We're going to help you with your solution. And then that's going to help us make recommendations on how we transition into the future. And it might mean you're getting your hands a little dirty, or it might feel a little dirty, but it's that credibility that you're building up, it pays back so much later. We've also found a lot of success in education across the organization, especially as tool sets change or techniques change. Something that I spent a lot of time with is I built a simple summarize bot where when I'm reading news or I see a great episode of Data Storytellers and I want to share that with my team using the share menu on my phone, I can share that into a Slack room by hitting 2 buttons. I don't have to copy and paste it. It automatically goes to the page, whether it's YouTube, whether it's Reddit, whatever, it goes and it summarizes that article and it puts an automatic generated summary in Slack, and that can start a conversation. Those Slack rooms where we're sharing that news and educating everybody on the things that I'm thinking about are open to the other team so that they can post what they're thinking about as well. Our partners, our teams internally within my organization, we can all discuss these challenges together. And so that is an informal coffee or water cooler talk in a virtual world path to sharing ideas and establishing some common ground there. And so we found a lot of success there, and training events as well. But those are all kind of the necessities that you have day to day. We've also found as we look at each entertainment product, they're all different. Again, different platforms, different genres, different IP. They all have different constraints that they're working around. Starting early with those teams, ideally when the games are in concept or in early development, and asking them, okay, well, what are the problems that you see ahead? What are the things that you're concerned about? Ideally, now that our team's been around for so long, we have data products that we can bring in and say, well, if we adapt this here, we can show you a time to value much quicker here. Let me show you what this looks like when the business is still small, when you're working with test data, or go run it on an older game and show we're going to run this technique to give you an answer. Let me run it on a game we already have in a live environment. I'm going to show you those results. And we can beat it up together and see if that's appropriate for your business. So a lot of the areas where we build up trust are either working in somebody else's solution, an existing solution that we then bring in, or it's using older games to prove out that concept before. So we're coming to the front door with something of value that shows that we know what we're talking about.
Very cool. Actually, one of the upcoming episodes that I already recorded, but it hasn't been released yet, is with Brian Bolzer, who is the VP of data science and digital over at G&J Pepsi. And he has a lean background, so an operational excellence background. And he actually attended one of our master classes. Everyone was very impressed with him. And he brought a lot of those principles and applied it like specifically to generate trust and camaraderie with the cross-functional teams that just made it really easy for them to drive adoption of data science and analytics. So you spoke to a lot of that, which I appreciate. And then on the flip side of that, I think I might have mentioned earlier Dave Coughlin from CVS Health. He's one of our most active members in the community. He's the executive director of data science there at CVS. And one of the episodes that we recorded, which is already released, was specifically about that, of how to really position the data science team in a way where people will use your solution, enjoy your solutions. He actually kind of brandished one of their success stories where the sales team that they developed a solution for ended up calling that app that they developed Disneyland for salespeople, right? Which is actually where you want to be. And we recorded another podcast, which is not released yet, which is about managing. Actually, it is about how to become a superstar as an entry-level professional and how to level up really quick. But as we unpacked in the episode, it's amazingly valuable for leaders want to drive performance in their teams, right? Dave is actually a really cool guy. He's also in Boston, so maybe you guys could have a cool connection there. So maybe then shifting the focus to the team management. So I'm interested. You said it, so I will have to explore. So can you unpack the background a little bit? So I didn't notice the names before you pointed it out. So those are actually team members that you have there, and on the skateboards in the background.
Well, so what I meant. I would love to have skateboards. I mean, the leaders on my team deserve to be on skateboards themselves as well, but each one of them is a superhero. But behind me, these are superheroes from the superheroes and quasi-villains from the DC universe. And so we build games. Of one of the IPs we work with is with DC. And so in these large virtual worlds, in many respects, we're spending all day with these folks as our coworkers.
Okay, very interesting. You see, I thought that you meant that, we actually have these superhero personas for the team members, which actually made me think that I actually, maybe subconsciously, is something that I'm trying to do in the team as well. Just to give you an example, the new guy we hired, his superpower will be that he speaks the language of generative language modeling to a level where he can just apply that and, shape and mold reality using that skill. And it's true for the other team members as well. So how have you really instilled that posture in the team, that collaborative attitude? I mean, we're talking about highly technically skilled individuals, sometimes with PhDs. I just talked about this. You probably saw with Lisa Cohen from Twitter, who's the senior director of data science there. We had a specific segment of the podcast just talking about that specifically. But what have you found to be the best practices from your perspective on making sure that your team kind of breaks out of that, potential tunnel vision when they are really locked into thinking only data science and analytics, and open themselves up to embrace what the business needs and speak the language of those stakeholders?
Yeah, that was a great question. So as a team, we're a central service within the organization, right? And we don't want our partners thinking about us day in and day out, because ideally, when everything's working, they're building their business, things are growing, and they're just getting what they need. We don't hear from them. So I look for folks that have experience with a service-minded background. And then more concretely, every person on my team are folks that run towards a fire. When there's a fire, they're jumping in and say, how can I help? This might not be my area of responsibility, but I think I can help you with this. What can I do to help? And that's something that has served us well over the years. Again, so we were just talking about, sometimes it's helping in code you didn't even write, or in a technology that you don't normally work in, but you're finding that way you're showing that you're ready to help. So oftentimes my job is crowd control when there's an issue. And it's okay, I know everybody wants to jump in and wants to help with this. Why don't you two, can you jump in and take this? You guys, can you help cover for them while they're working on this, right? And that's, as long as you have that mentality, that's a great spot to be. I mean, there's technical skills certainly help, but I also see that the needs around to your example of changing the roles that you're looking for, the specific technical skills that we need day to day are changing. We expect we're going to have to cross-train folks coming in anyway, and that takes some time. But if you have that right mentality, you're going to fit in every time, and you're going to do well. You'll be valued by the partners, and certainly by your team members. So that's an unorthodox thing that we look for.
Absolutely. And now you made me think that actually, in every competitive field, and again, I like gaming among other reasons. I mean, you're a father too, so you probably, I don't want to presume, but you probably can use gaming as a bonding experience. I have one little one on the way as well, so I do intend to leverage gaming as a healthy part of their development, and being competitive is one of them. It really just drives high performance and engagement in the individual. And when we're hiring, my number one priority is basically the culture fit. The culture fit meaning that will this person fit in that culture of high performance that we have here, right? And I really am not looking for specific skills. Okay, there might be a few roles where, something might be pivotal, which is very specific, but it's becoming more and more rare. I would want that person to maybe speak a certain language, right, in their field. But I'm not looking for specific skills. In fact, for example, when we hire into more commercial roles, sometimes candidates disqualify themselves by having too much experience, because I know that I will have to break that down now, right? I will have to spend too much time breaking that down. So it will be interesting to see the shift on the market. And I think also a lot of people now will have to break out of their shells, because they won't be able to hide in a very narrow field of knowledge anymore. It just won't cut it. So they will need to upskill themselves. It was very interesting that you mentioned about these opportunities of, for example, when you see a cool episode and you want to share it with your team, now you can push pieces of content easily into different, messaging platforms. Now, I think, and this is why I see this parallel between these big technological steps after the dust settles. Like, what do you see if you look back in the past 20 years? For example, iPhone. That was like, okay, the iPhone arrived. That was a time before the iPhone, and that was a time after the iPhone. And before the iPhone, everything that the iPhone could do, which meaning you could listen to music on something, maybe browse on the internet, maybe watch a video and make a phone call, well, that existed in multiple iterations before. Microsoft rolled out a bunch, right? It just didn't really stick, because those things were all just gimmicks until it became practical and someone really unified those different things in a way. It was, in this case, Steve Jobs and his team and the whole, Apple operation that did that. And I see generative language modeling in a little bit of a similar way. I mean, all those small things were available in one way or another, but they were just gimmicks. They weren't practical. I'm actually not going to use that. But right now, you use it on a day-to-day basis. So that's really cool. Now, because we'll have to land the plane at some point in this conversation. Unfortunately, maybe we will have a follow-up as well. But what are you most excited about right now in the industry? If you look forward to the next 10 years, everyone says that, it's going to be the decade of data, right? And if you look at it really high level, everyone has been excited about AI. It's been a buzzword. A lot of times, unfortunately, it only becomes lip service in certain companies. Executives say, oh, AI analytics, 100%, but it actually becomes, when they actually have to, put actions behind that, sometimes that falls behind. But how do you see the industry moving forward now, and the importance of analytics and data science and the role it will play?
A great question. It's interesting that when you look at technology advancements, you mentioned a couple. There was a wonderful quote that I've kept top of mind over the years, and I don't remember who said it, but it's something along the lines of technology matures until it disappears. And so when you look at the iPhone was a moment where a GPS, your camera, MP3 player, internet communicator, when all of that merged together, and those all disappeared and just became a thing you had in your pocket, and you just took it for granted, right? We're the opposite end with AI, right? We're seeing the messy beginning, the raw guts of it, and we haven't built out the tissue that connects it and obscures it and makes it disappear into our day-to-day. And so I expect over the next decade, I mean, really, we're going to see months from now, I think it's going to be different at the current pace, right? We're going to see these solutions built into businesses. We're going to see them built into day-to-day workflows. I think the how we operate will change in subtle ways. I don't know if you're familiar with Parkinson's law, but Parkinson's law is that law of software development says something along the lines of the time it takes to complete work expands to take the time that's allotted. Well, the The reverse is also true, that as you become more efficient, the amount of time you allot for tasks shrinks. And I think certainly having co-pilots, having a trusted paired programmer sitting next to you that can assist you in what you're doing, that's a force multiplier. You can have, with AutoGPT, you can now have a whole collection of queries back to an OpenAI model that are supporting various needs, where that used to be a team that was scheduling meetings, or that was doing research, that was putting together action plans, that was documenting your product roadmap. All those things can now be automated. You got one person that has that working alongside. It's going to take time to build that into our workflows in a way that is consistent. I think there's going to be and scalable. I think there's going to be a weird time where we're experimenting. Think about feature phones and the early smartphones, where there's all sorts of weird stuff that was out there. We're entering that zone now, where we're going to try a lot of things. And to your point earlier, there's not everybody adopts all at once, right? There's the William Gibson quote, right? Of the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed, right? So we're seeing the early adopters that are implementing LLMs into their flows and are seeing some success with it. We're going to see some spectacular failures too, people that invest in the wrong ways, and that will help steer a proper landing. But I do think ultimately at the end of the day, the example you gave of your own staffing, I think we're going to see that at scale, where the jobs we traditionally hired for and how we constructed teams are going to change here very soon, where we look for folks that can maybe work more autonomously or work in smaller, very focused groups with an army of co-pilots supporting them. It's going to take some time to get there, but I think that's where we end up. And I one thing that gives me, actually two things that give me confidence. Best predictor of future performance is past performance. We've gone through these technology changes in the past, right? So adoption of the internet, mobile, social, cloud computing, these were all big shifts in our thinking and our architectural solutions. They obliterated generations of technology that existed before they arrived. But the end result is that each one of those changes actually ended up creating more economic possibility, not less. And so I see that being the case here moving forward. And then the other piece that gives me comfort is I think most technology teams, you look at your backlog and there are thousands of items in there that you'll never be able to get to, right? So having a force multiplier that helps just means you're going to get deeper into your backlog, which I don't know about you, but I am very much looking forward to that moment.
Oh, absolutely. It's already happening here with our project backlogs. Again, right. I do feel some, filial connection between even, you guys at game development, like a huge company, us being like a small high growth startup, very same kind of challenges and attitudes. This constant backlog, right? I mean, in your case, or like in software development, you have your own type of backlog. In a startup like ours, it's a project backlog because, you can have multiple challenges. Either in a startup, you're struggling to find growth opportunities, or it's exactly the opposite. It's just like the growth is so intense that it's about capturing those opportunities, and that creates the project backlog, right? And we knocked out like 4 of these huge project backlogs in like 2 weeks, right? Which is insane, unprecedented. No one could have expected it. So I'm also very optimistic. It will be messy though. So naturally, with something so huge, the transition won't be smooth. With these big trends, again, often the case is that there will be a few winners who really capitalize on this, and then many people who just unfortunately miss out on this. But look, this was a great conversation, Matt. I think we could continue for probably a few hours, especially if we dive into more gaming related aspect. But I want to be respectful of your time. Is there anything that you would like to give as a personal advice to our audience, who are people like you, senior executives in data science and analytics in large companies? Just maybe like a condensation of your best insights and experiences and learnings, what would you advise them to do if they want to lead successful teams?
Great question. I think something that has served me well is as a data steward in an organization, and a charge of building data democracy, that really comes with it a need to be neutral. And where possible, acknowledging that and finding ways to show that you're neutral. That comes from listening. That comes from pulling partners in, sometimes into the messy parts of your team and showing, hey, here's how we operate. Would you like to be a part of that? Let's collaborate together. It comes from being an educator and sharing things that you learn, sharing your perspectives with those teams, and being open. Ultimately, building a product, building an entertainment product, especially, is a labor of love for partners and for everybody that's involved as part of that. And finding ways to show that you're a trustworthy, neutral party, and that might take an unorthodox path. For us, that's been a guiding light and worked well. And I would hope that others have the same success there as well.
Fantastic. Well, I think that's a great note to finish on. Matt, really appreciated the conversation, and we'll look forward to having you on maybe at some other time when we can explore even more.
Sounds great. Thank you, Laszlo.